Initiating System 1. System 1 loaded.
Video games have come a long way. Let's have a blast from the past. Let's relive 90s gaming and how it was to be a gamer in this time period. We will bring some nostalgic feelings and something interesting for our millennial viewers. This is Lonely Mimikyu, and today we will be talking about how it was to be a gamer in the 90s. So if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any new videos. And if you enjoyed this one, please tap the like button. Don't forget to check out my other videos, and if you have any ideas on what to make a video about, please leave a comment, as we may do more of this if you really like it. Without further delay, let's jump on it. The 90s could be called the golden age of gaming. It was a decade of transition from 2D to full-fledged 3D graphics. This was also the time period where a lot of other game genres were created, from FPS to MMO, even real-time strategy games. Now I'll talk about what 90s gamers had to go through. In my opinion, gamers of today do not properly appreciate how different gaming is now compared to the 1990s. Hopefully my fellow gaming elders can commiserate over these, while the younger generation can get some perspective on just how good you've got it. Spoiled. Many retro gamers forget how insanely difficult some titles were. But back then, tools like the Game Genie could deal with any unfair difficulty. New gamers with new codes came out all the time, meaning you had to buy fresh editions of the book or magazine, or to search for those codes in game magazines. I also want to emphasize not owning a copy and just borrowing it from a friend. You had actually to write them down, which was a feat on its own. Yes, you heard me. Write it down on an actual paper with a real pen. Next thing I would like to talk about is wires. Wires were everywhere. You had a long wire from the console to the TV. Since controllers back then didn't have long enough wires, so you would have to sit somewhere in the middle between you and the TV. Then you would have to stay a tad bit close to the console, because you wouldn't want to yank out a controller while you were playing. Not to mention, you wouldn't want a broken controller either. Another thing that younger generations wouldn't understand is the waiting time for the third player to be able to play. Most consoles at that time could only accommodate 2 players at most. Most of them even 1. Kids today are still wasting time arguing about which console is the best. But this annoying, cyclical argument was perfected in the 90s console wars. And it wasn't just Sonic vs Mario that got discussed, but which system had the best version of third-party games. Thanks to fairly different hardware, releases like Aladdin, Street Fighter, and Sunset Riders had fairly dissimilar SNES and Genesis ports. And it always sucked to find out the better version came out on the system you didn't own. Things got even more complicated in the PlayStation, Nintendo 64 and Saturn years, where the ports of Tomb Raider and Resident Evil varied wildly in terms of sound, textures and load times. It took a lot of research to find out which version was superior, often by parsing out conflicting information on message boards at the dawn of the internet age. Your parents may have adapted to you sharing the living room TV when you played your games, but taking over the family phone line to play over the internet was a step too far, and for most parents. To hear that sweet sound of dial-up initiating, you sometimes had to carefully negotiate time with family members to even play over your 33K modem. For many, the landline was the only way to get a PC online, and engaging it for gaming meant the phone wasn't open in case of emergencies. Yep, you heard me. Landline. Most modern games begin with about an hour of tutorials before the action really gets started. That's a bit too guided for some, especially when compared to old games that expected you to seriously study the manual before playing. Those booklets remove the fluff when starting a campaign. But what of those that misplace the manual? You better memorize how to unequip items or unlock bombs early, because you won't have that information after your little brother misplaced the written instructions. This lack of a manual was also the pain you simply accepted when renting a game, because Nintendo actually sued rental stores to prevent them from including the official booklets. If you wanted higher quality music and cutscenes, a compact disc could hold it all, though it sometimes took more than one disc to contain a massive game. That meant some games, particularly RPGs, came with the responsibility of protecting as many as 5 different discs. Titles spread across multiple CDs increases the odds of breaking or scratching your precious game exponentially. Misplace or damage just one of them, and you'll be buying Final Fantasy IX all over again. Squaresoft didn't sell disc 3 separately. Imagine playing hours upon hours just to find out you didn't have enough memory on your memory card. Not having enough memory to save the game was a thing. Now everyone can save a game anytime and anywhere, but back in the day you had to venture around till the game you bought decides you can save. Yes, we didn't have the privilege of getting to save when we want. The game you purchased always dictated when we could save. If we could save. Analog controllers brought a whole new dimension of movement to gaming in the mid-90s, but they also brought a whole new set of problems. If you were used to carelessly laying down your controller on the floor when you were done, Mario might be walking in the wrong direction when you turn the game back on. Unplugging and reinserting the controller port usually fixed things pretty easily, unless you played Mario Party or similar destructive titles that could ruin an analog stick. At that point it was too loose to ever reset properly, so you either had to scrimp and save for a new controller, or you simply deal with it, until, hopefully, you got a new one as a present. Renting games were nothing out of the ordinary when it was in the 90s. Not everyone could afford games at that time since it was expensive. With that comes the pain of losing your saved game, because you had to return your game. Yes, that was a thing as well. Younger generations couldn't imagine this is pain. Another thing is playing the demo version. 90s was tough for gaming since you can't just go out and buy a game. We were given the chance to demo them through some game magazine that throws out free demos. I will say this was mostly focused on CD-ROMs though. Yes, CD-ROMs, not DVDs. Maintenance of your hardware. Most of the time your console would have problems. You can't play the game you want because the cartridge or CD can't be read. So what do? We blow on them. And if that wasn't enough, you blew the console too, hoping something would happen. But it doesn't. It actually causes more damage than good, to be honest. So you decide to flip the PlayStation, since your friend said it worked. We did everything we could to fix what we had. We steamed the CDs with our breath, then wiped all the dirt to clean it off. Or maybe even put the console sideways. Why not? Are there any other experiences you had? Leave a comment down below and let's talk about it. I always find the 90s quite fascinating, as it was a really diverse and crazy decade, with a lot of technical evolutions and a lot of jumps in technology. But this is all for this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. So do you agree with the information I just gave you, or was it different in your city or country? Leave a comment, and don't forget to like this video and to subscribe, as this really helps the channel to grow. I'll see you in the next video. The only Mimikyu out.